Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, obviously you know the Lions are not playing today, but that doesn't mean Lions fans are not going to be paying attention to what's going around the NFL with a number of other games and a number of other teams. They definitely are. They're going to pay attention, obviously, to what's happening in the Steelers game. They're going to pay attention, to what's going on with the Rams game. They're going to pay attention to what's going on with a number of other games because those games have direct, correlation to what the Lions are going to need to do over the last month of the season, to get ready for the potential playoffs if they should get into the playoffs. Because the Lions currently right now are sitting at about 55-60% of getting in. So it's not a sure thing. But depending upon who loses today, it could make it a lot better. Or potentially a lot worse. We'll see. But I wanted to talk about something else here really quickly because it's week 14. We've seen a lot of things happen over the course of this season. And at this point, there's a topic that has been, very much hanging around, kind of like the ghost of Christmas past, that, everybody knows is there. Everybody used to talk about it quite a bit. But nobody's talking about it now. And in this topic, I call it the road not traveled topic. I call it now that you've seen where you didn't go, now you can kind of evaluate what you missed out on. That's the kind of topic in this episode. Because let's think about this here, folks. Over the course of this season for the Detroit Lions, which has been very much up and down, there has been a new coined phrase that has come from many podcasters and analysts that are primarily local, but that phrase is what I can now state, and a lot of people now know, is what is known as New Money Detroit Lions fans. And New Money Detroit Lions fans have been very vocal, very boisterous this year about making repeated calls that Brad Holmes needs to be held accountable for his failure to improve the roster in various different positions. And the areas where primarily these fans are doing the most talking for are the offensive line and the edge rushing room. Now, what does New Money Lions fans actually mean? What does that actually refer to? What it's referring to, in essence, are these new fans that have become fans of the Lions, so they're in essence new to the bandwagon, so to speak, and they're just making a whole bunch of noise. They're doing a whole bunch of complaining because they don't like the fact that Brad Holmes has not made moves to improve the offensive line room and to improve the fact of getting another edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Now, while the sentiment in that regard might be newish, the fact of the matter is that some of these people that are making this noise are not necessarily New Money Lions fans. They've been Lions fans for quite a while now. That's the truth, and no matter what you want to try and call it. And some of you know exactly some of the people that I'm talking about in this regard. Not going to name any names. But the point is that there are some Lions fans out there that would fall into this category, but they've been Lions fans for 10, 20-something years. They're not new. They're just making a whole lot of noise in regards to this whole particular situation. So that's why it's being called new. So, the point of the matter is that I'm talking about here is that these quote-unquote New Money Lions fans have been openly boisterous about their criticism and about their admonishment of freaking Brad Holmes for not making better acquisitions to, improve the offensive line and the edge rushing room. And while that sentiment is definitely newish in some aspects, the fact of the matter is that for those that are in that group, while they are very boisterous, while they are very loud, it's still a relatively small group of fans who are making that noise about pretty much stating that, hey, you know what? Holmes and Campbell, they need to be held liable, or Holmes and Campbell need to be fired because of this transgression and a couple of others. Now, I've stated this before. While I agree that Brad Holmes has not done nearly enough to improve the team this year in the way it should be or could be. I do not agree that Brad Holmes should be held liable in the sense of, not giving credence to some of these new money Lions fans' ideas. Because let's call it for what it is here. If any GM just literally did whatever a fan wanted out there, or whenever there was a large number of fans that wanted something done, they wouldn't stay the GM very long. Because let's call it for what it is. The average typical fan is only going to know maybe about 20 to 25% of what the actual GM is going to know. Even a guy like myself who takes an immense amount of time to invest in understanding things, I might at best only have 50 to 60% of the picture. That's the problem, is that, listen, I have a good idea, but I still don't have the full picture like what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell do. Even guys that are supposedly insiders, maybe at best might have 75% of the whole picture, but they still don't have the whole picture. The point is that these new money fans that people are talking about right now, they wanted one of two things to happen. And the one thing they wanted more than anything else was to get a high-profile, big-money edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. But there's one thing I can tell you right now. Had the Lions made that move, one of two things was going to happen. I can guarantee it. I can guarantee it. Here's what would have happened. Number one, we would have made the move, and then at some point, somewhere down the road, those very Lions fans, they would have gotten frustrated or disappointed because what they thought they were going to get did not actually turn out into what they wanted it to be. Or maybe it did turn out to what they wanted it to be in the most part, but it didn't get the final end result they wanted for. Well, then that would have angered them because then they would have realized what the eventual cost was going to be when it was applied later next season. There's no way that this whole thing would have ended with a good note unless the Lions actually got to a Super Bowl, which, again, if you trade for an edge rusher, yeah, you're going to improve the defense. But where's been the majority of the problem been for the Lions this year? It's not been the defense until recently. It's been, majority of the time, the offense. But again, where most of this conversation has come from is the edge rushing component. So, if we go back and we take a look at the fact that that's where the biggest area of grievance has been placed, the biggest area of contention has been placed, that then means that, okay, they wanted to get an edge rusher. Why? Well, let's go back to the beginning of the season really quickly. We had Zadarius Smith on our team. And everybody felt that, hey, you know what? Once Aiden Hutchinson comes back and we pair him with Zadarius Smith, we're going to have the best possible edge rushing tandem in the entirety of the NFL. And then, what happened? Brad Holmes made the head-scratching decision, the absolutely ridiculous decision, to cut Zadarius Smith. Even though Zadarius Smith had expressed that he wanted to play for the Detroit Lions, and even though Zadarius Smith was on a team-friendly deal as an edge rusher for the Detroit Lions. Because you have to think about it. Last year, Zadarius Smith was a top 10 edge rusher in terms of his ability to get after the quarterback in terms of winning his pass rushing sets. He was a top 10 quarterback in terms of applying pressure and making the quarterback uncomfortable. So all of that on the deal that he was on, which was very team-friendly, and the Lions still cut him. So now, Lions fans felt betrayed and they felt like they'd been hoodwinked because now, the one thing that we were absolutely looking forward to seeing, which was Hutch and Zadarius Smith absolutely terrorizing the hell out of quarterbacks, we're not going to get to see. But everybody held out the hope that, okay, if you cut Zadarius Smith, you got to be going out and getting somebody else, right? You have to be. Nope. The Lions decided they were going to stick with Marcus Davenport, which that to me is an absolutely egregious fault. Because Marcus Davenport has not done anything for the Lions. Let's just call it for what it is here. The Lions, they have had Marcus Davenport on their roster for the last 2 years. At the end of this year, it'll be 2 full years, right? Well, every NFL team now plays 17 games. And that's if they don't get into the playoffs. But if you include the playoffs as well, the Lions have played, by the time this season is done, if they should not get into the playoffs, 35 games. If they get into the playoffs, it could be 36 or more. But let's just go with the 34 analogy here, which is 17 plus 17, which is 34 games. In those 34 games, Marcus Davenport so far has only suited up in 6 of them because he played 2 last year and he's played 4 this year. 6 out of 34. Yeah. That right there tells me that is a bad investment because for all the time that we've invested in him, he has not done anything for us. So instead of sticking with Za'Darius, we decided to stick with Marcus Davenport, and Marcus Davenport hasn't done a damn thing for us. But I will say this. All those Lions fans that we're talking about in this category, they want us to go out and get somebody like a Trey Hendrickson, right? But here's where now, taking a look at the road that's not been taken, you can actually see how Brad Holmes made a brilliant decision by not going out and making a move for Trey Hendrickson and actually sticking to his guns. Because the Lions had somebody that was on their roster that absolutely has proven to be more valuable and supremely more of a consistent player than Davenport has ever been. His name, Al-Quadin Muhammad. Now, why I bring this up is because, like I said, this entire offseason, and even after the offseason finished and we had gotten into the regular season before the trade deadline, there were many Lions fans that fell into this category. Wanted, begged, pleaded, demanded. I mean, they were absolutely adamant about the Lions going and getting Trey Hendrickson. It was damn near everywhere. You could not swing a dead cat in damn near any direction without somebody somewhere talking about the possibility of, hey, you know what? What would it mean to the Lions if they were to trade for Trey Hendrickson? And that was all anybody wanted to talk about. Primarily Trey Hendrickson, but it was just around the main idea of trading or acquiring a better edge rusher to pair opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. That was the primary topic, but it was all centered around Trey Hendrickson. Because they were like, hey, Trey Hendrickson is disgruntled with the Bengals. He wants out. The Bengals are actively looking to trade him, but they want their pound of flesh. They want a first-round draft pick. And a lot of these Lions fans that I'm talking about, they thought that if we were to go and get Trey Hendrickson, that would be the missing piece to this defense, and it would make it into a Super Bowl team competitive overall. The problem is that as we've seen now over the course of the season, the defense has not primarily been the issue. It's been the offense. The offense now is starting to figure itself out a little bit, which is kind of weird considering the fact that, we've lost Sam Laporta. We're on like our third or fourth tight end, and on top of that, we still haven't figured out what the hell we're doing with our left guard position. But yet, the offense is starting to figure itself out. Whereas, even though the defense has been primarily more healthy than the offense, now the defense is the one that's having the problems. But let's just think about this. Had the Lions made the trade for the edge rusher, okay, sure, you would have been absolutely ecstatic about trading for an edge rusher of such high-profile, status as Trey Hendrickson. But the problem is had Brad Holmes made that trade, had the Lions actually invested in that trade, it would have completely destroyed the team moving forward. And it would have proven to be a disaster. And I can say that because of what has happened this year with Trey Hendrickson. And I can say it based upon the fact of what the Lions have done this year, because like I said, the problem has been with the offense, not with the defense primarily. The defense has only been a problem most recently. Majority of the year, the defense has been on point for most of it. But the reason why trading for Trey Hendrickson would have been an absolute disaster is because how many games has Trey Hendrickson played this year? Oh, that's right. He's only played 7. We're going into week 14. That means that out of half of the games that Trey Hendrickson has played, he's missed just as many. He's missed, 6-7 games now? That means that you would have traded a first-round draft pick and potentially more if the Bengals really wanted to play hardball for a guy that would have sat on his duff and done nothing for half of the season. Think about that. Because people can say, oh, well, the injury happened while he was in Cincinnati. Injuries don't matter whether they happen. They're going to happen one way or the other. So you can say, well, maybe if he came here, he wouldn't have gotten injured. Maybe. But the point of the matter is, he's injured right now. And chances are, it wasn't going to matter if he moved from Cincinnati to Detroit that the injury was all of a sudden just going to magically disappear. That's not the way reality works. Again, reality is not that fickle about it. It's going to hit where it's going to hit. But let's think about it here. Trey Hendrickson has not played half of the season that he's been able to play this year. But I know this much. Lions fans would say, well, in the 7 games that he has played, he still has 4 sacks. So that means he's got 4 sacks out of 7 games. That means that he's at least getting a sack a game, right? Or, every other game. So that's still good. He's got a pass rush win rate percentage of 21.5%, so he's still making a really good impact there as well. Okay, that's true. come back to the one area where I know a lot of Lions fans would not have had a night, who would not have been very happy about this. What is Trey Hendrickson getting paid right now? Oh, $29 million. He's on a one-year contract for $29 million with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, $29 million for only having played in 7 games and only garnering 4 sacks. That's a lot of damn money for such a pittance return, in essence. And the reason why I say that is because the Lions and Al-Quadin Muhammad, the Lions have gotten Al-Quadin Muhammad to play every single game that they've played in this year. He's not missed a game. Number 2, Al-Quadin Muhammad has, wait for it, how many sacks? 9. He's got double the amount of sacks that freaking Trey Hendrickson has. Now, granted, I will say this, Al-Quadin Muhammad only has a 16.5% pass rush win rate. So yeah, it is lower than Trey Hendrickson. But the guy's played in every single game, and the guy has double the amount of sacks that Trey Hendrickson has. But here is where it makes all the damn difference in my mind. Trey Hendrickson, big name profile guy, absolutely would have gotten the entire fan base, excited. Would have gotten a lot of other people around the NFL saying, hey, the Lions made this trade. They're going to be Super Bowl contenders because they're going all out for it. Well, like I just stated, Trey Hendrickson's getting paid $29 million a year, right? And he's only got 4 sacks and he's only played in 7 games. You want to know how much money the Lions are paying Al-Quadin Muhammad for all 13 games he's played in so far with 9 sacks, which is double both the amount of games played and double the amount of sacks Trey Hendrickson has? The Lions are paying Al-Quadin Muhammad $1.4 million on a 1-year deal. I'm not a mathematician. I've stated that more times than I care to enumerate. But I know this much. 1.4 goes into 20.7 times. So in essence, the Lions are paying a guy 21 times less, and he's produced double what that guy that everybody wanted us to get would have done. Think about that. Everybody wants to talk about how, a GM needs to find ways to, go out and get guys on small deals and have them show up in big ways. Well, the Lions did that. Al-Quadin Muhammad has done exactly that for the Detroit Lions. He's getting paid $1.4 million and he's produced 9 sacks. And he's played every single game versus a guy who's being paid $29 million and has produced less than half the sacks and has played less than half the games. I mean, that's a steal in anybody's book. I don't care what kind of thought process you have. Now, some people would say, well, David, that's just one example. The Lions could have made a trade for anybody else. What about Jalen Phillips? We could have traded for him. He was only a 3rd-round draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, fine. Let's talk about that for a second there. Jalen Phillips, a 3rd-round draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, that's definitely more manageable than a 1st-round draft pick. His contract's definitely a hell of a lot more manageable. That's also true, too. But here's the problem. What is Jalen Phillips' primary position? Outside linebacker. Yes, he plays edge, but his primary position is outside linebacker. Well, here's the thing. The Lions already have a guy that kind of does what Jalen Phillips does for the Eagles and what he used to do for the Dolphins. That guy's name is Derek Barnes. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but what did Kelvin Shepard say about Derek Barnes when he was wanting to become when he became the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions? He literally told Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, Derek Barnes is a guy that I absolutely have to have on my defense. And oh, by the way here, how many sacks does Jalen Phillips have this year playing between 2 separate teams? He has 4. How many sacks does Derek Barnes have with the Detroit Lions this year? The exact same, 4. So you would have traded a 3rd-round draft pick to go and get a guy that his job's already being done by a guy in Derek Barnes that we've already got on our roster, but you would have still wanted to trade more draft capital to go and get a guy, and now you got guys that are fighting for, snaps because, oh, that's right, the Lions also got back at some point this year Rodrigo. So wait a minute here, we got Rodrigo, we got Campbell, we got Angelo, and we got Barnes. That's a pretty stacked, that's pretty full linebacking core. You now add Jalen Phillips into that, you got guys that are fighting for snaps. Which now that means you completely thrown the chemistry of that unit into, whatever. And now you got to figure that out. So, again, that was never a realistic option either. And then, let's go back to the whole conversation with Trey Hendrickson here, just really, really quickly. Not only does the Trey Hendrickson deal or thought process look really bad now when you consider what Al-Quadin Muhammad's been able to do this year on 21 times less the amount of money being paid. But then, like I said, you would have had to have traded a first-round draft pick to get Trey Hendrickson, who has sat on his duff the majority of the year and has not produced nearly as much. But then, here's where the real kicker would have kicked in. And then this is where people would have really gotten pissed off. Trey Hendrickson would have had to have a new deal at some point. Well, think about this. The Lions were never, ever going to want to negotiate with Trey Hendrickson. You want to know why? Because Trey Hendrickson's not interested in winning at this point. He's interested in getting a bag. He's interested in getting his money. Well, the reason I can say that is because what happened the previous offseason when we went through a very similar situation like this with a cornerback by the name of Carlton Davis? Because, oh, that's right, we traded a third-round draft pick to Carlton Davis, to the Bucs for Carlton Davis, who was on the last year of his deal. The Lions clearly wanted him. They wanted to retain him after this last season was done. But Carlton Davis said, no, I want my money. I want to get my money. And the Lions said, listen, this is what we're going to give you. You can either take it or leave it. He decided to leave it and go play for the Patriots. That's how we got DJ Reed, a guy of very similar talent, but we didn't have to pay as much to get him. So the reason I bring that up is, what makes you think that the Lions, if they weren't willing to play that game with Carlton Davis, that they're all of a sudden going to want to play that game with Trey Hendrickson? No chance in hell they would play that game. So, in essence, you would have traded a first-round draft pick for Trey Hendrickson for, in essence, a half a season worth of actual playing time up to this point, with only 4 sacks worth of production, which is the same amount of sacks that Derek Barnes has, mind you, and less than half the amount of sacks that Al-Quadin Muhammad has, only to then see him ship out at the end of the season to go play somewhere else after you've already paid him the $29 million, and on top of that you paid the first-round draft pick, which now means, oh, you don't have a first-round draft pick to invest next year into potentially improving your offensive line. Now you're out of a first-round draft pick to potentially try and find a replacement for Trey Hendrickson in said draft. Which, let's think about this here. Where's been Brad Holmes done most of his damage as far as improving the team? Through the draft. So now not only would you have given up the $29 million, but you would have given up the first-round draft pick, and you'd have had nothing to show for it. Y'all seeing where I'm going with this thought process about the road not taken? There's a reason why Brad Holmes did not make that trade, because he was able to see where this whole thing would have most likely ended itself up at. Chances are, even if the Lions would have won that Super Bowl, which there's no guarantee that we would have, even if we made the trade, but let's just say we could have. The problem is that the very next breath that would have come out of Lions fans' mouths would have been, now you need to go and repeat. You have to go and repeat. Well, there ain't no way you're going to repeat when, number one, you ain't got a first-round draft pick to either, number one, fix the offensive line problems you've been having, or to now find a replacement for Trey Hendrickson, who's now bolted in free agency. And on top of that, where are you going to get the money to now sign guys like Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, and Sam Laporta? All of those guys which have proven that they are immensely important to our roster and our ability for it to function, because how's our offense been without Sam Laporta? What has Jack Campbell been to our defense? He's been the best linebacker in the league. What has Brian Branch been to our defense with Kirby Joseph having been on the mend for the last 6-7 weeks? Oh, what has Jahmyr Gibbs been? Only the best damn weapon. Forget best damn, running back. The best damn weapon in the NFL. You're going to honestly tell me that you would have traded all that away for Trey Hendrickson to then watch him bolt in the offseason to then know that you would probably have to let 1 or 2 of those guys go because now you just spent $29 million on a guy that said, hey, you know what? Thanks for the fun, but now I'm going to go somewhere else because they're willing to pay me more. You would have absolutely been pissed to lose any one of those guys, even if it meant getting a Super Bowl, because then it would mean that, okay, you know what? We had our Super Bowl, but now we completely disappear. You guys, and I'm not saying everybody, but the majority of Lions fans want the ability to win a Super Bowl, but at the same time remain relevant thereafter. And that's where this whole problem comes in with the whole conversation about Trey Hendrickson in the edge rushing room and anything else, is that you have a lot of Lions fans, and again, I'm not saying all, I'm not saying the majority, I'm just saying a lot, who want their instant gratification. They want to have what they want, And then they want the ability to have it later as well. And it's like, listen, the only way you're going to get that is if you play the long game. You cannot just think, oh, you know what, we're just going to push all of our chips into the table, and you know what, that somehow is going to make a difference as far as, hey, you know what, just like how the Rams did it. You know what, the Rams, great for them. They did what they had to do. But you know what? They've not been to the Super Bowl since. And after they went to that Super Bowl, they fell on hard times. Now, granted, they've rebuilt themselves, but the point of the matter is that I'm just going to be willing to guarantee you this. If the Lions went through that, you want to understand the massive amount of cries that would come from Lions fans calling for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to be fired because, oh, you got us to the mountaintop the previous year, but now we're back in the gutter. What the hell happened? And the reason I can say that is because of what's happened currently right now. Because the Lions did not make the trade that they wanted, they've been crying bloody murder for it. At least some of them anyway. But yet nobody's talking about what Trey Hendrickson has not done for the Bengals this year. Now some people might want to say, oh, well, you know what, maybe that's just because the Bengals aren't going anywhere and he just doesn't want to do anything. Maybe, maybe not. But the point of the matter is that you really wanted to risk everything to go and acquire Trey Hendrickson to only potentially then see that go away at the end of the year with or without potentially a Super Bowl. If there was no Super Bowl, it'd make it even worse. If there was a Super Bowl, okay, great, we'd have that Super Bowl. But it would make it that still more of a sting because then it's like, okay, now we lose out on the potential of Gibbs, Laporta, Branch, or Campbell. And you don't have the ability to necessarily bring in the guys that you need to replace on the offensive line that you're trying to fix. Or to fix the edge rushing room once Trey Hendrickson leaves again. That's my whole point here. Yeah, you know what? We didn't get Trey Hendrickson. Yeah, you know what? We didn't get somebody else. But Al-Quadin Muhammad has done excellent for us this year. And again, we're paying him a fraction of what some of the best edge rushers in the business are doing. And yet, if I recall correctly, Al-Quadin Muhammad's got, like I said, 9 sacks, which means he's in the top 15 this year. Top 12. So, realistically, what are you griping and complaining about? He's done well for us, and we haven't paid a hell of a lot for him. So, Brad Holmes did his job there. So just because he didn't make a high-profile trade, what are you whining and crying about? The point is we still have our first-round draft pick, we still have our second-round draft pick, we still have our third-round draft pick. We have those draft picks to go and help build ourselves moving forward. We have the salary cap that we need to also help build and also retain players that we've already acquired. That's the plan. I know a lot of people don't like that plan because it means that we still have to wait. But you know what? What's the saying? Rome was not built in a day. A Super Bowl winning team is the same way. How many years did Howie Roseman have to build the Eagles before they got a Super Bowl? How many years after they won their first Super Bowl did they have to wait again before they got their second one? It takes time, folks. That's all I'm saying. But, again, I've come to the end of this episode, so I'm going to end it and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things, like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you enjoyed the content, which some of you may, some of you may not have, hope you all will subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. But if you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you subscribed just now and you haven't had a chance to do so, want to encourage y'all, also please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Hope y'all are doing well. Hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.